So guys, I'm disabled, and because of that, I can't use my legs. My mother says that I'm useless and I'll never be a part of the family business. She wants my brother to take over all responsibility and become the CEO. But guys, I'm the one who went to business school. I'm the one who dedicated all my life to learn the craft, and I'll be darned if my mother steals it from me. So I decide to tell my father this. I used to be the only child of my parents, and I was the pride of my mother, until I lost the use of my legs. I know it's crazy how my legs were what made me lose value in the sight of my mom, but you see, my father is from a wealthy background, but it did not influence his decision to get married to my mother, who was more or less of a nobody at the time. She became the wife of a very rich and influential man, and this altered her life for good. Well, her life was not the only thing that was altered, her attitude was too. Although my father did not place any demands on her as to how she lived, she took it upon herself to make sure she lived, quote, up to the standard, and while this is good, she overdid it. My mother did not want anything that would smear the image which she now bore. My dad noted to my mother how he wanted just a child, because he wanted to be, active in his or her life while managing his business too. Something he would likely not be able to do if they gave birth to several children. My mother was okay with it, and after I was born, my father began considering vasectomies. It was a good thing that he stalled his decision at the time, because my mother did not just live up to the standard that she set for herself, but compelled me to live up to it as well. I consider myself to be smart, and this was something that began showing at the early stage of my life. I performed very well as a child, and my mother would often waste no time in parading me before her circle of friends. While there was nothing wrong with that, my mother became blown with pride that she would often talk down or mock her friends who were not, quote, as successful as her family was. Things changed when I was involved in an accident by the age of 4, and my parents were instructed I would no longer use my legs as long as I live. My mother began getting somewhat retracted from me, and she starts talking to my father about giving birth to another child. My father did not welcome the idea, but his refusal was no match for the pressure that came from my mother, and he soon gave in. This was how my younger brother Justin came into the picture. My mother turned her focus on Justin, and she tried making him the face of the family. I continued with my life, passed out from college, and my father asked that I come into the family business. It was a nice suggestion but I asked to be allowed to go to business school so I could be better equipped and useful to them at the firm. My father allowed me to have my wish, and it was crystal clear, once I graduated from business school, that it was the right decision. I gave my all to the company, and the results were visible. This led my father to place me in a very prestigious position within a year of me working there. My brother, Justin, graduated from college, and my mother immediately suggested to my dad that he incorporate him into the firm. My father suggested he goes to a business school just like I did, but my mother insisted that he did not need a business school to make an impact. My father brought Justin straight to the company, and he proved to my mother and everyone that he was not ready for the job. My father tried his best to ignore my younger brother's incompetence. He was, however, forced to point it out one day when he was confronted by my mother at home. My mother met him and demanded he place my younger brother in a position more pronounced than mine. My father asked what is her reason, and she said it's because my younger was, quote, the face of the company, and would be better support system when they grew old. My father immediately frowned at his wife's twisted mentality, and he rebuked her for making me seem like a low-budget human because of my physical disability. He went ahead to point out that my physical disability had not stopped me so far from helping the company grow, unlike my brother, who was a very impulsive decision-maker. My mother, she threw tantrums by saying my father had always treated me special because of my disability, but my father did not let her words alter his decision. He told her that if my brother was to climb the ladder of success inside the company, then he was to attend a business school and prove us to be useful. He noted to my mother that if it were some staff that underperformed like Justin, then he would have fired that individual a long time ago. I overheard the conversation between my parents and it simply broke me. Why would my mother claim my success so far has been because of my father's sympathy and special treatment? I approached my mother later on and told her that I'd overheard her discussion with my father. My mother immediately claimed her discussion with Dad should not have been seen by me as hatred of her. She claimed to still love me, but noted that her discussion with my father was simply because my younger brother Justin was unfairly treated. Of course, by my father inside the house. I tried to understand what she meant by Justin being unfairly treated, and it made no sense, so I asked her. My mother said that I was given a prestigious position, while my brother was relegated to the background of a common worker. It's proof enough of the injustice. I did not tell my mother this, but if one carefully looks at the situation, one would see that Justin was the one receiving the special treatment. He was still an employee in the company, and all he added was little value. I did not bother pointing out to my mother how wrong she was because I knew it would do no good. I just told her that I was sorry if this perceived injustice was, meted out my younger brother and was seen as my fault because it was never my intent. Well, my mother agreed that it was not my fault, but noted that I could still help the situation. She suggested that I talk to my father and ask him to consider her request about promoting my younger brother. Her suggestion was very insensible because she just wanted my father to place the, quote, the face of the family in a position that he did not merit. I agreed to talk to my father even though I knew it was a terrible idea. I approached my father and told him that I wanted to speak with him about the discussion or argument that he had with my mother earlier on. My father was sympathetic and asked that I ignore my mom. I could not ignore my mom, not when she was claiming I would have turned out useless in life if not for my dad's sympathy. I asked my father to consider promoting my younger brother for peace to reign, but he refused. He told me that I was letting my mother guilt-trip me into making that demand, but he would not give in. My father was right, but I knew that even if he gave in to my mother's demands, my brother's incompetence would quickly become more pronounced once he was in a more pronounced position. So, I pressured my father to just let my mother have her way. After much pressure from my mom, my father summoned the entire family together. He told us that he's decided to give my brother and me a fair chance to prove ourselves, and whoever did so would be named the company president, while he would go into an early retirement. My father's statement caught the attention of my mother, who I knew would want nothing more than just to parade Justin as the president of the firm. The task was simple. Justin and I would both be given different but equal numbers of staff to work with, and whoever was more productive by the end of the quarter would be crowned the winner. The task was to prove each individual's ability to lead a team. My mother immediately asked my father not to influence the results of the test by going behind to motivate the workers who would be assigned to me simply because he wanted me to win at all costs. She even suggested that my father was to talk to the staff who would be assigned to Justin, as they would likely be reluctant to put their best since they were already sympathetic towards me. I don't know what I would do to prove my mother that I am where I am because of merit, not sympathy. My father rebuked my mother very sharply by telling her that it was going to be a fair competition, and nobody was going to give special treatment. He then took the opportunity to say that if my brother performed poorly, then he would take an unpaid leave from the company, more like a sabbatical, and go to business school. Well, Justin did not want to agree to the terms that my father stated because he was unsure that he could perform very well, but our mother insisted on his behalf. The announcement was made in the company, and my mother soon approached me. She apologized for her comment about Dad influencing an already sympathetic staff to help me win the competition. She noted that she had spoken with my father and agreed Lydia was put on my team. Lydia is my longtime friend who's always stood by me, and her relationship with me was very instrumental to her, getting the job at the firm. I declined because I did not want my mother in the future to claim that I'd won the competition because I had a sympathetic friend on my team. But my mother noted it was not a big deal and claimed that she would not influence the whole process. Let the best man win, was what she said. The competition started, and I worked with my team differently than they were used to. I did not just make plans and issues orders to be followed. No, I rather made them a part of the decision-making process. I sat with them to listen to the suggestions they had, and I discovered that you can learn a lot from people if you just listen. We came up with a few productive ideas and began making plans to execute them. We were, however, surprised when my brother and his team would implement the ideas that we formulated. I initially passed it as a coincidence, but when this coincidence repeated itself for the second and third time, I knew there was more. There had to be a snitch among us because someone had to be leaking our plans to my brother, and his team and I planned on fishing the person out. The mistake that I made from the beginning was to not carefully vet those who were on my team before trusting them with, this information. I decided to correct that mistake individually, and Lydia would be the first to subject to a test. Lydia's my close friend, and I did not see her as somebody who could betray me, but it was a protocol that my team members had to go through. I called Lydia to my office 3 weeks ago and told her that I'd discussed with the rest of the team about a move we planned on making. I sought her opinion about it, and she noted it was a great idea. I was shocked when my brother and his team started to implement my plan 3 days later. I did not think Lydia, of all people, could be responsible for our stagnation while helping my brother get productive. I was seriously wounded, so I called her into my office and told her that I believed there was a mole in our team who was feeding our information to our competitors. Lydia seemed pained by the news, and she swore to help me find out who the person was. I looked at the actress sitting right before me and told her it's unnecessary as I already found who the mole was. She curiously asked who it was, and with her energy you would think that she was loyal. I asked her what I had done to her to make her betray me. Lydia looked like she was confused, but I told her to drop the act, because I'd already found her out. Lydia kept on insisting on her innocence, and I then went ahead to ask her how the opposition managed to get the information about the latest plans then, which I shared with her days ago in my office, and Lydia said someone else from the team might have told them. Yeah, I said no, that's not possible. You know why? Because she's the only one I shared the information with. Yes, that's right, I lied to her that the rest of the team had been aware of the plan. If my brother and his team had not implemented it, then I would have known she was innocent and played the same trick on some members of the team till I found out who the mole was. Lydia finally confessed when it dawned on her that she was busted. She noted that my mother had planted her in my team to keep them updated about every move. According to her, she had initially refused when my mother approached her and even proposed paying her. But my mother threatened to, make her lose her job if she did not cooperate, and I carefully thought about what to do, and though I was mad at her, I decided it's best to use what was intended against me for my good. I told Lydia to play along and not let my mother or Justin know that I was aware of what they've been doing. I promised her that once I won the competition, she will no longer have to fear my mom as her position, and the company was already secure. With me being the president. My family and I were all having dinner one evening when I began talking to my father about a major move my team and I wanted to take. My mother and brother, who were at the table, acted like what I said was of no interest to them, but I knew that they were subtly just listening to it. I told my father that this move of us would shoot our profit margin up, and my dad commended me. I, however, told him that the move required a huge amount of capital, and I wanted, to solicit the company to give me and my team the money required to make it work. I could not tell my father what the move was, because my mother and Justin were at the table, but I told him the amount. It was, around $3 million. Yeah, my father freaked out. He noted that though he was glad I had an idea that could boost my productivity, he could not risk the company's money on such an idea, and secondly, the capital that Justin and I were both given at the start of the competition was what we were supposed to use in getting productive. My father suggested that I use what was at my disposal to get productive, so I thanked him all the same. I did not expect him to give me the money. The business idea was really stupid, and I only did what I did to set a trap for my mother and brother. A trap for which they quickly fell for, hook, line, and sinker. I was with Lydia the next day when my mother called her and wanted to cut her head through the phone. My mother queried her for not keeping them updated about my current move, and Lydia acted like she did not know what was going on. My mother was not willing to take Lydia's excuse. She threatened to deal with her if she felt she could take her money and not keep her side of the deal. Lydia told my mother that she literally had no idea what I was up to, but promised to investigate the matter and get back to her. I had her call my mother yesterday to tell her that she had discovered my plan. She asked to meet up with my mother, and they arranged a meeting at a local cafe tomorrow. Things are currently going as planned, and even if I don't win the competition, I would use the things I've discovered to make sure my mother and brother face my father's wrath. They would not know what hit 'em. Update number 1. Lydia had finally met with my mother and Justin, and the whole conversation was recorded. Yeah, my mother started with bad-mouthing her for being sluggish. Lydia apologizes to my mother and tells her that she now has the information. She told her that I planned on investigating in a stock with the proceeds from the sales that my team and I made. She told my mother that the return on investment would be a staggering percentage, 300% within 2 months. Lydia threw a hook for my mother to swallow by telling her that I planned on getting a huge loan and using the car my father had given me as collateral. My mother immediately told Justin not to sit back and let me make that move before him. Lydia had given them the impression that the more money they invested, the more gain they stood to make, so my mother compelled Justin to use both the car my father's given to his team and his car as collateral. She even went further to say that she would get a loan for my brother, and once the proceeds came in, they could repay the loan, retain the cars, and still have made the company a staggering amount of money. This, according to my mom, would secure the position of president for Justin. Lydia asked my mom why she was fighting against me, and my mother told her she has no idea the level of embarrassment which she had suffered on behalf of me. She claimed her circle of friends had used my condition to ridicule her. But how was that my fault? They were not, returning the favor if she never mocked them when they faced certain unfavorable conditions. Besides, why was she keeping such company of friends? If something were to happen to Justin, I don't know, let's say he lost his hand, would she label him incomplete and start advocating for another child with my father? Yeah, it was painful to say the least. Lydia then told my mother that she was done working for her as she could not keep stabbing her friend in the back. I listened to the recording and my mother's voice roared like thunder. She did not mind that she was in a public space and immediately told Lydia that it's too late for her and she's already collected her money. Lydia proposed returning it, but she declined. She threatened to make sure Lydia's life was a living hell if she backed down at that point, and she told Lydia to come back to me and try discouraging me from making the move that I supposedly wanted to make. Well, my mom still promised Lydia a much better position once Justin won the competition and was made to the president. Lydia noted that it was going to be difficult dissuading me from something which I had set my mind on, but my mother, to her at least, get me to stall, if she could not get me to quit. I'm currently laughing at my mother's foolishness as she's just fighting to get herself in trouble. Update number 2. We were having dinner 3 days ago when my father asked about the plan I'd previously discussed. I told him that my team and I would no longer make the move as it was capital intensive. I could see my mother's face light up with a smile. My father noted dropping it was the wise thing to do, and my father had barely finished his statement when my brother Justin said that one should not bite more than one can chew. Otherwise, one could end up choking. I knew his statement was a subtle jab aimed at me, but I acted like I did not hear what he was saying. The time for evaluation is close, and my mother and Justin had began panicking. They began calling Lydia to tell her that they were yet to receive their return on investment, and it was contrary to what they've been told. Lydia knew that the business deal would end in calamity, but she tried her best to keep them from jumping out of their skin just yet by telling them to be patient, as I'd exhibited strong confidence in the business plan. Time quickly moved, and my brother began to panic. He approached my father and suggested that he postpones the day of evaluation for just 2 months. My father asked what his reasoning was, and he claimed that he's taken steps from his team and it was yet to yield a result. He claimed that once the deal came through, it would surpass any progress I've made so far. My father was willing to grant my brother's request, as he claimed my brother should have utilized the time he was given. My brother pressured my father, and my father noted that the only way he would grant the wish was if I was in support of it. So, he sent for me and told me what my brother said. I resounded my father's thoughts by saying that each individual was to use the time given, and asking for an extended period was not fair of the other party who's been working within the time frame. I told my father that I was not willing to have the time extended, and he simply said the evaluation and prize-giving event would still hold. I then made a statement to the hearing of my brother that one should not bite more than he can chew, otherwise he could choke. My brother flared up and began telling me that the fact he was asking for the time to be extended did not mean that he was not ready. He began ranting in I would be surprised when the day came. I did not say anything in my defense, and I noted the best person would win. My brother did not know that while he and my mom were making a wrong investment with the little proceeds that they garnered, I was busy working around the clock and implementing more strategies to ensure that we covered lost ground. The event would be in just a few days, and I'm positive it would favor me. Update number 3. I can barely make this update as I'm yet to recover from the joy I experienced after humiliating my mother and brother Justin. The event took place yesterday, and my adversaries were disappointed. My mother invited some of her friends to come and witness, as her son would be crowned the new president of the family firm, while my brother Justin was just decked in a black tuxedo accompanied by his girlfriend. He and my mother felt their moment of glory was at hand. Way before the event got to the part where the winner would be announced, my mother paraded my junior brother around and termed him the new face of the family firm. The program got the part that we've all been waiting for. My father took the podium and began talking about how things would take a different turn in the company as he would step down for one of his children to handle the reins. I could see my brother, his lover, and my mother swelling with pride. My father then started talking about the outcome of the results. He noted that my younger brother Justin had made some remarkable moves during the period, and those moves yielded some profits to the firm, but much of the profit was yet to be accounted for. I knew what my father was talking about. The remarkable moves were my ideas, which he initially stole, and unaccounted profits were the ones that they used to invest in the terrible venture, which I indirectly made them do. My father then talked about me. He noted that I was slow in getting to my feet at the beginning of the competition, and I almost made some terrible business decisions. But I got to my feet at the later part of it, and he announced me as the competition winner, and a rousing applause erupted. So, my father went ahead to invite me to the podium when my mother reacted and created a scene right then and there. She began accusing my father of playing favorites once again. My father was embarrassed, but he tried to hold himself and signaled to my mother to calm, but my mother absolutely refused. Well, guys, the drama kicked off, and it was too much for my father, so he called the securities to kick my mother out of the scene. Since she wanted to embarrass herself, he decided that he would help her do it easily. I was called to the podium, where my father talked about how proud he was of me. He told everyone present that I've refused to let my physical disability limit my impact in life, and he was sure that the world was yet to see the best of me. He then announced me as the new president of the firm and the face of the firm. The atmosphere erupted in a deafening applause, and my brother, who could not hide his shame, stormed out. My father's bent on dealing with the issue because he claims the embarrassment from my mother was bad. We'll be having a meeting this evening so we can address the issue. Final update. I have just taken my first decision as the firm's president, and guess what it was? That's right. I just fired my mother and brother. My mother and brother have been keeping malice with me ever since yesterday. So when my dad called the meeting, I knew that their reaction would be. We were all gathered, and my father demanded to know why my mother had acted the way she did the previous day. My mother starts playing the whole card of how my father's being manipulated by me. My father was about to defend himself again, but I jumped right in. I told my father that my mother had been actively working behind the scenes to make sure that he saw me as a failure, as she claimed I was an embarrassment to her. My mother tried denying the claims, but it did not stop me from saying what I wanted to. So I told my father that my mother had planted my close friend Lydia on my team so she could act as a spy for her, and that was exactly what she did. I noted that the strategic moves that my father had praised my younger brother for executing were the plans that I'd brought up with my team but had stolen by my brother. I informed my dad that Mom and Bro would likely end up in debt as they used the company car as collateral to seek a loan for a business that would not yield a result. My mother and Justin began denying what I was saying, and that's when Lydia announced her presence. I sent it to her. She confirmed what I said and produced a copy of the recording, which my mother acknowledged to be embarrassed of me. The moment it dawned on my mother that her lie was known, she immediately attacked Lydia on the spot. It took the housekeepers to separate her. After everybody calmed down, my father asked what I planned to do. I did not bother hiding the mischievous smile upon my face. I told my father that I could not work with my mom and brother because I could not trust them. I fired them. Right there on the spot, you're fired. My mother and Justin looked at my father to see if he would fold his hands and let me take such a decision, and noted that my decision would stand because I had the authority to do so. He did not just stop there. Oh no, he noted that he was embarrassed at my mom and brother for seeing their blood as an embarrassment, and therefore he would notify his lawyers to strike their names out of the will. My mother and Justin ran mad. And, but that's all they could do. They were lucky my father did not kick them out of the family home. I got to the office this morning and I sent for Lydia. I thanked her for cooperating with me and getting back at my mom and bro, but noted that I could not have her in the same office. She'd given me up once under pressure, and I was not sure that she could stand by me if, the same pressure ever came again. I'm currently house hunting while my brother's miserable and searching for a job. So instead of the mom of today's story and the brother just go ahead and settling and accepting the terms to the competition and just losing and that being okay, they decide to try to cheat, be narcissistic, manipulative, use OP's best friend against her, blackmail her. They deserved everything that they got at the end of the story, being fired and cut out of the will. It just wasn't worth it for them to try to go against OP like that. And the fact that OP was going through this with all the adversity and not being able to use her legs, this story was wild. I want to know your thoughts. What would you have done if you were OP and you had to handle a mother like today's story? Just let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you once again for joining me on today's videos. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate stories every single day. So if you want to be a part of these daily drama stories, drop a subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.